we are starting the last session. We are combining the last, both the sessions in the end. And this session will be ICT for inclusive growth and a very interesting panel. May I invite Anju Sharma, Secretary, Women and Child Development from the Gujarat government. Kindly come on the stage, ma'am. May I, she will chair the session, and I will request Dr. Omkar Rai, who is the Director General of STPI, which is the big driver for ICT industry of the country, and also now doing initiatives in IT in the government sector, to kindly come on the stage and jointly co-chair the session. And may I now invite Ms. Indu Gupta, who is the Senior Technical Director in SIO in Rajasthan, to kindly come on the stage. Also, I will invite Muktesh Pardesi, who is the Joint Secretary and Chief Passport Officer, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. Welcome, sir. I hope I don't have to use your mobile number now to renew my passport, since like there is e-passport now. And we have Mr. Samir from Power Grid, kindly come on the stage. And we have Mr. Korath from UID Kerala government. So if Mr. Korath is here, he can kindly come on the stage. Welcome, sir. So you can see the diversity of the panel. We have Central Department in STPI. We have the State Department from Gujarat. We have the NIC represented by Induji, and we have MMP represented by the Passport Office, and we have a PSU represented on the panel through Power Grid. You cannot get more diverse than this, I suppose. So the challenge for Anju ji is that to not only finish it off at 4:30, but also give a thread to the whole session, so that it goes it has a logical end in the end, that we have some outcomes of this event, of this session. Okay, so yeah, so I hand it over to the able. Who? Okay, I'm sorry, I think I forget about REIL. Ajay Bhargav from REIL. May I invite Ajay ji? I'm sorry, I forgot your name from here in the hurry of combining the sessions. Please welcome REIL. REIL is again a PSU, and like they are doing some very interesting work. They have a kiosk here, and I hope you had a look at it. So Anjuji, I will request you to the deadline is like already there of 4:30, so we have around an hour, and please take it over. Yeah. So I think like Muktesh has a PPT and Samir has a PPT, and like आपके पास भी कोई you have a PPT, so please like load it. So there are 3 presentations. Okay. Yeah. I'll do that. So while you like start the session, Anjuji, I think my colleague will load the PPT of REIL.
I don't have a PPT.
Okay, there is one that has a. You can speak in the meanwhile.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. So, with a challenging task ahead and the challenging topics that we have for the post-lunch session: inclusive growth, financial inclusion, and of all, Aadhaar-based services. All those people who have been involved with Aadhaar in some capacity or the other would agree with me that this is the discussion for the future. This has so many challenges which still need to be resolved. And with the direct cash transfers coming in, we have a long way to go, and we have to work out modalities. Both the Government of India and the state governments, they are in the process of working out the detailed modalities for all the 42 odd schemes that have been taken up for Aadhaar. The numbers for Aadhaar are, again, very daunting, but more difficult task than to create an Aadhaar number is that what we face now. Having digital list of beneficiaries, having applications that would enable direct cash transfers, and that would enable us to use the Aadhaar. We were just having a discussion on the lunch table, and that flowed from the discussion on the presentation on the fingerprint application that the police department has developed, as to why, if Aadhaar is also biometric and these are fingerprints, why do we need to have a separate system for fingerprints on one side and Aadhaar on one side? So we have to resolve all these things. We are in an era where in the last 10, 20 years, a lot of e-governance applications have been developed at various levels in government. All these applications, they have brought a good amount of change in not only the governance, but also in people's lives, because they have been instrumental in improving the delivery of services. As a result of which, we have created a large number of applications and a large number of databases. And most of these databases have not been speaking to each other. With the plethora of databases and applications we have, it's good that now we are moving towards a unified system in form of Aadhaar. But again, integrating those systems with Aadhaar in such a way that we do not waste our resources, that we do not create a system where we are duplicating the efforts, and we are able to most effectively utilize the Aadhaar system for bringing about inclusive growth and the financial inclusion of the beneficiaries, of the public at large. Because both are moving together hand in hand, and both have to move together hand in hand. Now, not taking too much time myself, I would hand over the mic to the first speaker. And I think the first speaker would be, why not we start from somebody from UID who can first give us an idea about how much progress has Aadhaar made in India, and what are the challenges ahead, and what is the program ahead. Please. Please introduce yourself, because I think you are substituting Mr. Nanavati. Yeah.
A very warm good afternoon. I probably must be the only person from UID, except a couple of officials from Rajasthan who are involved with Aadhaar. I'll be very brief because there'll be a lot of questions in the end, so we need to reserve time for that. My name is Korath Matthew, and I am presentation. Okay. And I am Senior Project Coordinator at UIDAI. I will quickly run through because this whole topic is about financial inclusion. A lot of questions which had come up, which probably I can take subsequently. I'll cover the presentation with respect to financial inclusion part. So just a brief about what is Aadhaar. It's a unique identity number. It is for all residents. It does not guarantee a citizenship, but only guarantees an identity. And it is very easy to authenticate. Online authentication is very easy and very cost-effective. And the privacy of data, especially the biometrics, is protected. Briefly, that is what I wanted to say about Aadhaar. What are the information collected? The Know Your Resident data, which is very valid for opening a bank account. Photo and address verification is required. 10 fingerprints and iris. This is a data which is going into the data center, the CIDR, which is the data repository, where we use it for deduplication. A couple of quick achievements which we had since it started. The largest biometric database, say around 25 crores plus, around 28 crores already enrolled. Almost 100% perfection as far as deduplication is concerned. Online identity anywhere, anytime. So we've been able to pilot it very successfully in our applications, and we've been able to get on the online authentication from the remotest corners of the, let's say Kakinada, where the public distribution system is effectively functioning. The authentication process itself is 200 milliseconds, and depending upon the network. So it's a very quick action. You may not be able to speak on the phone, but you'll be able to authenticate. That's what I'm trying to say. It's only 2 kbps of data which goes there. Superior technology, smart cards, I can elaborate later. It's a financial address, effectively, if you look at from, for every Indian, and aapka paisa, aapka haath, or let's say, aapka ration, aapka haath. This has been proved beyond doubt. And a lot of articles are there. I saw in eGovernance magazine also articles are there. I don't need to mention what are the financial benefits. Portable. That's again a thing. Most of the financial inclusion, there are a lot of business correspondence models there, but none of them are portable. Here it is a anywhere, anytime, from anywhere to anywhere. Like for example, you can take money from, even if you are a business correspondent of any particular bank. But I'll come to that specifically later. First, let me explain what is the Aadhaar-enabled accounts, then I'll talk about portability. Point of service specifications are ready, so it's all on our website, very easy to procure. Application framework is all ready, the codes and all those things are ready. And it's absolutely ready for government departments to kickstart with the application. Again, the most important part is we are only generating Aadhaar, but it's for the government departments or ecosystem people to actually utilize Aadhaar for creation of applications. And financial inclusion specifically, let me quickly, there are basically 3 things, 3 steps which are most important. One is linking of the account, Aadhaar enabling of account. And the second part is Aadhaar payment bridge system, whereby once account is enabled for a beneficiary, the government is able to transfer into that financial address or directly. And the Aadhaar enabled payment system, where using a Aadhaar enabled micro ATM in the remotest corners of India, you are able to draw cash or do banking transactions. So it's basically 3 steps process. The first is how do we create an account? How do you Aadhaar enable a person's account? Very simple. The UID generates the UIDAI generates a UID on Aadhaar number based on the biometrics, and the same is passed on to the banks. The banks just simply link this account. That's it, as simple as that. So second is the Aadhaar enabled payment bridge system. Here, what is APBS? It is some sort of a mapping provided by the National Payments Corporation of India. And it's a very easy, it's again basically an address So once an Aadhaar-enabled account is there, you should be able to transact into the account. Today we have a comparable model in the form of Visa card to Visa card, card-to-card transfer is there. So you don't have to put the IFSC code there. You can transact between card to card. You can have mobile to mobile. So it's something like that. It's very easy to understand from that perspective because you have a unique ID. So you'll be able to transact between the unique address to unique address. Who are the stakeholders? There's no doubt. Besides the government organization, the citizen is one of the biggest stakeholder. And why ABPS? Because you should be able to quickly transact. Today, if a NREGA payment is to reach a beneficiary, it has to move from the central to the government to the district, and it takes a long time. Here it is a direct transfer. So direct cash transfer comes out of that. I'll skip this little complicated slide. Again, a 1-minute guide to how to enable Aadhaar payment bridge. The second part is the Aadhaar-enabled payment system, where we are able to disburse money to the beneficiary or do banking transaction through our micro ATMs. That is Aadhaar-enabled payment system. How is it different from other micro ATMs? How is it different from other micro ATMs is that there are, as you know, there are already business correspondents engaged by many banks. But these banks collect biometrics and the micro ATMs function on a one-to-one basis. They can only transact with that particular bank. So if it's a business correspondent of SBI, he can only transact with the SBI bank account. He can't take money from Union Bank of India or Canara Bank. This is different. So we have ensured portability. You can use your micro ATM to take money from any bank where your account is Aadhaar enabled, from anywhere. So if you let's say when you're getting ration from a particular public distribution fair price shop, the person who's getting that benefit can go to any fair price shop. As of now, it's not like that. You are attached to a particular PDS shop. But now that portability is possible. So the portability and at a national level, certainly possible. Who are the stakeholders? I've already explained. And why AEPS? Reach access of banking facility to the rural villages. That's the biggest beneficiaries. This is the biggest gain because the banks won't be able to establish branches. So you have business correspondents who's practically doing all the banking transaction close to the citizens. Roughly, we've just shown how much of effort is required for a man to get money when he gets a simple NREGA payment. So he gets 546 rupees, let's say a NREGA payment or whatever it is. He spends so much of money in transport. Let's go back to the previous one. He goes to the bus stop. You know, the whole day's transaction is spent. And as this simple way of able to do transactions close to him makes individual. We are talking about other savings. You know, the Ego magazine talked about other savings in the form of leakages, etc., which is well known. I don't want to elaborate that. But from the citizen perspective, I would say the greatest achievement of Aadhaar is you're able to get your ration or your money into your hand directly after authentication. And authentication process, I said, is easier than breathing. The process itself is just 200 milliseconds. So the rest of the part is all the latency in the network, which in any case is not more than 4 or 5 seconds. That's it. Thank you very much. Subsequently, we'll answer questions with respect to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthew. Now, before we take the questions, I would request Dr. Indu Gupta to make her presentation on the direct cash transfers, how they've been doing it in Rajasthan. Please.
Good afternoon to all of you. In Rajasthan, we had started, in fact, there is a very popular scheme that is Mukhyamantri Jeevan Raksha Kosh. Okay, that is a step beyond, I would say. in the sense that it is a cashless transaction. In fact, all the people who belong to BPL families, they are given health benefits if they are without having to pay anywhere in the authorized hospital. So they go there and they can get their tests conducted, they can have the treatment, prescribed treatment, they can have the medicines, and all this is basically cross-checked with their BPL ID, and then the bills are generated, automatically generated from the hospitals and sent to the department for reimbursement. So the end user is not paying anything. When we are talking about UID-based direct cash transfer, similar kind of systems I am able to foresee. And in my opinion, the foremost requirement for building up such a system is to have the scheme information automated. Because until unless we have the schemes data and the beneficiaries data online, and the processes implemented, the direct cash transfer cannot be enabled. So in fact, one of the challenges which I foresee, in fact, we had the first speaker from UID, so that's really good, and he's here. Aadhaar seeding, in fact, these databases which are ready, how do we populate them with UIDs? So, at the same time, for having a direct cash transfer, it is necessary that the accounts are in position first. Okay. So, in fact, these two challenges I would like maybe during the course of discussion to be answered, that how to do Aadhaar seeding in the existing databases and how to have the accounts created, which of course Government of India is working at a very high level. Once these accounts are created, the mechanism of direct cash transfers also needs to be set up. In fact, here I would like to again refer to one of our softwares which we are using. In Government of Rajasthan, we have implemented integrated financial management system where all transactions from the government are taking place directly to the bank accounts. Okay, there is no, there are hardly any checks printed. They are directly being, whether it is salaries or it is payments to the third party or it is basically other vendors' payments, they are all getting credited directly to their accounts. But in that process, we have faced a lot of challenges, and in fact, it involved 7 agency banks only. That is in case of Rajasthan only. Nationally, if we see, there will be many more banks who will be involved. Here, we had to work with 7 agency banks, having 309 branches. So, in fact, there is a data standardization also which needs to be worked out for transfer of the funds between the agency bank and the schemes databases. So, that is another area where we may have to look into. Then the third area, like where we are able to receive the payments and making this service available right at the doorstep. In fact, there is an existing infrastructure of primary agriculture cooperative societies which are also working as a mini bank. But why that structure is not getting exploited is because they are not automated. There is a program of automation of PACS, Primary Agriculture Cooperative Societies, through NABARD, and NIC is playing a very important role in that. We have worked out a pseudo core banking solutions, which is a low-cost solution working on the cloud computing, and the PAC needs only a very minimal amount of infrastructure to operate. In fact, but the challenges there are again like implementing it in such a remote area where as of now, of course, NOFN will come up fast, but as of now there is no connectivity, there is no power, and building up these solutions we have started. In fact, in this year, in the before March 2013, there is a very ambitious plan that 1,000 PACs in Rajasthan itself will be automated, and they are already working as mini banks. But once automated, every member of that PAC will have an account, and they will be available. And through pseudo core banking solution, they will be connected to the main cooperative banks, where anywhere banking will then be possible. So, in fact, we can think of at this stage of having UID enabled bank accounts even in the PACS itself, when we are about to start. So that's what I had to say about the initiatives which we are taking in Rajasthan. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a lot of questions for you, and I was telling Kapil Awasthi in the morning, in your presentation you only gave us questions, you never gave us a solution. But here is another presentation, and we have so many questions in our mind about the direct cash transfers, how they're going to take place, and I'm sure you may not have answers to many of them also at this moment. So we accept that fact. But basically 2-3 things that have been bothering all of us is, as she said, number one, is it going to be a banking platform, a loan, or a non-banking and a banking platform where somebody would kind of release an amount on behalf of the government at the doorstep. Second thing is that what would be that network of agencies that would release the amount at the doorstep, or that would provide the service at the doorstep, and what are the kind of agencies that would get involved, including the village level workers, the cooperative banks, the cooperative societies, and what have you, all kind of agencies that are there in the village. So probably our patwaris and all that also. So that's the second question. And third, the digitalization of data, that's most important. Certainly we cannot move without that. But digitization of data will take place because some formats will evolve. But states have been working on digitization of data. So how do you make it uniform? Because different states so far have been taking 5 schemes each. And they have been kind of trying to develop their own model. And then now we have a scheme of direct cash transfers, and you have 42 schemes together. So in that, how is the integration going to take place? So, and plus 1 or 2 more questions that she raised. So plus what I would request the audience is that if you could come up with whatever questions that you have in mind at this stage, so that we can hand over the mic to him to answer all our queries.
Answer this.
Okay.
And then.
Okay, so he first wants to answer.
I know there are a lot of panelists as well, so
Overhead.
I will be as brief as possible. First and foremost, see, Aadhaar is, UID is a tool. See, we always boast ourselves as a very thin organization with 250 people, and it is the ecosystem which is actually driving it. The UID gives an authentication tool which gives an yes or no answer, and that once you feed the UID number into the database or into the application, it deduplicates, gets rid of the ghost details, and since it's a unique ID, it also becomes a financial address. So it is a tool. It is for every one of us to make it possible. There are we've got 6 applications which is going, almost 3 to 4 lakhs beneficiaries are already using it. So it's pretty proven and tested system. Second, Aadhaar-enabled ATMs, micro ATMs have been sanctioned at the rate of around 15,000, around 1 lakh ATMs have been sanctioned. It will be funded, but it will be funded through the banks. So the business correspondents would have to approach the banks. The banks would actually take on this responsibility. So 1 lakh micro ATMs would be being funded. So that's another incentive which has come from the government. Digitization of, like previous speaker very nicely said, application has to be ready, centralized application has to be ready, digitization of data is all required, then only you can, unless there is a digitized data, unless there is an application, you can't really enter the Aadhaar number into that. And once the Aadhaar number is entered, then you can start interlinking the various application, and you'll be able to roll it out very easily. And uniformity and standardization, of course, there is no doubt a big role will have to be played by NIC on that. Fortunately, the NREGA platform has been developed by NIC, and recently I've realized that in PDS also they're doing fantastic work. So we'll be working with them, and they'll be working with us. We'll be collaborating to ensure that this kind of cloud systems are created so that applications are easily rolled out for the state, and it makes it very easy for the states to do. I hope I've been able to answer some question. Yeah.
Are you involving both the nationalized banks and the cooperative banks and the private banks, or only nationalized banks?
Oh yes, yeah. No, the process of Aadhaar payment bridge or Aadhaar enablement of the accounts, and or let's say onboarding of the banks, there is a process, As of now, roughly around 10 banks have got already Aadhaar enabled, in which includes United Bank, then Central Bank, and Punjab National Bank, and Bank of Maharashtra, Andhra Bank, ICICI, Axis Bank, etc. The 10 are already there. Rest are in the process. Cooperative banks and post office and all those things, they have to have a core banking solution for it. They need to develop a solution, and it will be possible. It will be possible for everyone to Aadhaar enable the account. It's pretty simple. If they can transact on Visa, so can they transact on Aadhaar.
From my experience of implementing IGMSY, Indira Gandhi Matrutva Sahay Yojana, again a Government of India scheme, which involves cash transfers, we have this scheme running all over in this country, various states. And we had a meeting very recently, and we found that those states that are using post offices for the scheme are doing it very well. Like, we are also using post offices, and the states that are using only banks, they are not using that well. They are not doing that well. So I would strongly recommend that post offices and cooperative banks, perhaps also, cooperative banks of established repute and that have a flawless track record, they can always be taken. And not to eliminate post offices at least, because they are very much deep-rooted into our rural and rural fabric.
Sure, we need to have a core banking system. That's,
yeah, please, questions. And we'll restrict to 2-3 questions because of time constraints. Yeah, please.
Ma'am, a simple question about UID is, why we are issuing a unique identity card to a person who is not national of Indian national actually? Because if UID is telling it is, he is not, they are not confirming whether he is Indian national or not.
It's not true. We have a proof of identity and proof of address to be produced, and it is to be scanned into the system. Then only he's. So unless he produces, let's say, a license or a voter ID card, he can, or unless he is introduced by an authorized person, you would not be able to enroll into the system. Notwithstanding, it does not guarantee you residency or citizenship. Okay.
The nationality it should guarantee. Actually, we are transferring cash. If a person is not a Indian national, why we are transferring cash to his account or him?
No, I think he's being misunderstood.
This has been debated, and I'll take this question. Subsequently, we should focus on financial inclusion part. Yes. I'll take this question later, subsequently, because this debated, and a number of articles are on this. We'll have to discuss on this later. Okay.
Under the FI?
Firstly, with respect to the NPR, National Population Register, and UID, one started slightly earlier, and the second one, the UIDI, came up much later. So initially there was some concern, but all those concerns have been put to rest. Both the organizations are working hand in hand, supplementing and complementing each other's effort. The division of responsibility of the NPR agencies and the UID agencies have been clearly demarcated. All the 18 states for UID and the balance 600 million for NPR has been clearly. Both of them use the same biometric methods for biometric capture and for deduplication. So, and NPR is a registrar of UIDAI. So there is actually no conflict of interest as of now.
Geographical locations within India. So it is following a distributed system. Whereas if you are changing the geographical location, your NPR number may change. In the
I think he is satisfied.
No, Aadhaar number will always be same. I am talking about NPR.
He's made it amply clear how the two are common and how the two are related to each other. Yes, you had some question in mind? Anybody else? Okay.
Financial security, see, we are using the core banking system for all financial transfer. So the technology which is being used for business correspondent method, Aadhaar-enabled payment system, much resembles the same business correspondent model. Only advantage which Aadhaar-enabled payment system using the micro ATM, Aadhaar-enabled micro ATM is bringing. So I'm saying that BC part is been well taken care of as it is, the security all thought through. Now let us see what the additional benefits which Aadhaar is brought. Aadhaar is brought, one, portability. Second, the whole process of each bank collecting biometrics and processing and all been got rid of. They have a ready-made platform in the form of Aadhaar database. So these are the two major benefits which is coming. Otherwise, the rest of the part has been not taken care of in the initial core banking system by the BC.
Okay, so now we move on to the next presentation, and again a very interesting person who will interest all of you, because that is also one area that touches all our lives. My batchmate from Foreign Services is Joint Secretary and Chief Passport Officer. So I'm sure we all have too many questions for him. So let's have his presentation. Mr. Muktesh Pardesi.
Distinguished panelists, distinguished participants, it's a welcome opportunity to speak to you on a Passport Seva project, which the Ministry of External Affairs has recently rolled out successfully. In the morning, a secretary from Department of IT was speaking of outcome, outcome, and outcome. This is one project which will satisfy most of you that we have been able to achieve those intended transactions, and we have been able to achieve the intended outcome. This is a success story, and recently, in fact, early this month, we were awarded with the CSI Nihilent Award for Excellence for being the best e-governance initiative undertaken by the Government of India in 2011 and 12. Well, this is one of the mission mode projects undertaken by the government under the National E-Governance Plan. There are 27 of them, but this has become one of the most visible project. Its coverage is universal, and it's truly a global project. Any Indian, anywhere in the world, has to get passport through this system. Well, this project was conceived sometime in 2006, 2007, on the basis of study undertaken by NISG, National Institute of Smart Government, and the Secretary IT used to be then CEO of that company. In 2007, we obtained cabinet approval for creating 77 Passport Seva Kendras under PPP mode. The project is being undertaken with Tata Consultancy Services. The vision is very loud and clear. We want to give hassle-free passport services to our citizens in an environment which is comfortable and the processes which are transparent. Why Passport Seva? We frequently hear about complaints relating to delays, non-receipt of police verifications, grievances not being handled properly, All these regions led to conceptualization of this project. Last year, in 2011, we issued more than 73.65 lakh passports. This year, we are expecting this figure to be in the region of 8 million. With the 37 given passport offices, this was not possible for the government to give satisfactory service. There was limited scalability, there's staff shortage. We also wanted to create a platform for issuing e-passport, which will contain biometric details in due course. Well, ICT enablement has improved overall governance in passport offices. The stakeholder, the first stakeholder is the Aam Aadmi citizen. He has been provided with better access points. So 37 passport offices now are supplemented with 77 passport seva kendras. For instance, in this state, we used to have one passport office in Jaipur. Now the Jaipur passport office is supplemented by 3 more PSKs, one in Jaipur, one in Jodhpur, and the third one is Sikar. So the access points have gone up. We are following appointment-based service. There are multiple channels for providing latest information through National Call Center, through online. The citizens can have a real-time status tracking and inquiry facility through the call center. This call center operates 24/7 in 17 Indian languages. We have an effective grievance redressal mechanism, and the whole process has brought in a lot of transparency and accountability in the system. In fact, the government officials take decision on a particular passport application form in the presence of citizen. So citizen has been empowered. He can ask question why his date of birth certificate is treated as doubtful, or why a particular document a government official is suspecting to be fake and or not up to the mark. This was not happening earlier. For the government staff, processes have been re-engineered. There's a lot of streamlining of processes. Under PPP mode, some of the front-end activities has been delegated to the service partner, and the MEA, the ministry, is concentrating only on core activities, such as sovereign and important government decisions. The embassies have been integrated. The management system has now better MIS reporting system. We can monitor day-to-day functioning of the passport offices. The police department has been integrated. Now the police verification form is transmitted to either state headquarters or the district level electronically. Similarly, police reports are generated and received by us electronically. In Karnataka, we are undertaking a pilot project where the police verification form will go electronically to the Thana level. Depending on the success of Karnataka experience, we would like to replicate that experience in other states. Similarly, the postal department has been integrated with the system. The moment passport is dispatched, the citizen receives a SMS alert about the passport number and the date of delivery, so that citizen could be in the city or around to receive the passport. Now, when the citizen visits a passport seva kendra, there are self-service kiosks. He can take help of these kiosks in form filling or status check. There is electronic queue management system, and we have a single point of enrollment where the file, the application form is digitized, the photograph of the applicant is taken, biometrics are captured, and the documents are scanned, as well as the fee collection is obtained. As I mentioned, this has brought in effective grievance redressal system through a call center. The management has been provided with business analytics reports. The police departments, the Director Generals of Police or IGPs who are responsible for passport work in the states, they have access to a daily dashboard. They can monitor the dependency of police report in their state. Well, in terms of project execution, we have, I think we have set a national benchmark. The first pilot was set up only in May 2010, and after due certification in January 2011, we started rolling out in June 2011. In 1 year time, we have created 70 offices. I take pride in this fact that in no other project has been unveiled and rolled out in our country in such a short time. It's a part of the same 27 mission mode projects mandated by the government of India, but in terms of project execution and timely delivery of the project itself, we have created a national standard. Well, in terms of digital inclusion, the staff which has been recruited by the service provider, they belong to generally the same area, they speak the same language. The whole idea of creating a call center with 17 languages is also intended to provide a sense of inclusiveness. Our portal is available in English as well as Hindi, and all PSKs follow international norms for special facilities for senior citizens. We have a child care room. No other government department can boast of a special feeding room for mother. We have facilities for physically challenged applicants. This is a look of Passport Seva Kendra in Kolkata. I will skip this. These are some of the feedbacks by eminent citizens of our country who represent politics. There is a comment from Member of Parliament. There is comment from Som Mittal, President NASSCOM. There is somebody from NDTV, Maya Sharma, who commented very positively about the project. In terms of future roadmap, we are going to work further on police verification process. As some of the speakers have spoken about CCTNS, I think our future is also tied up with that. In 5 years' time, when CCTNS will be completely unveiled in the country, getting a passport will become even more easier, because getting the police verification report from the police side will be a lot easier. We are working with other government departments to integrate our project so that one project can speak to others. We are talking to Aadhaar people. Very shortly, Aadhaar card will be accepted as a proof of residence and identity. We are also talking to them about authentication of Aadhaar number. We, in some states, particularly northeastern states where the Passport Seva Kendra could not be opened in PPP mode, the government is committed to open what we call Laghu Kendras. So maybe in 1 year time or 2 years time, we'll have some outfit in all states and union territories of the country. I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
We have about 15 minutes now, and we have 3 presentations still to come up. All these three are public sector enterprises, and we have first Mr. Ajay Bhargav, EGM Corporate Planning and IT from Rajasthan Electronics and Instrumentation Limited. So if you please go ahead with your presentation. I would request you to please restrict it to about 5 minutes. Just keep it short, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I've been given the mandate to speak about our efforts in IT in the next 5 minutes, and I'll try to do justice to it. We are a 30-year-old company. Can I just have a presentation, please? We were established in 1981. We are a joint venture between Government of India and Government of Rajasthan. We are a mini Ratna organization. We are a Schedule C company, ISO 9000 quality system, EMS in place. We are a small organization, and we have been trying to leverage the ICT in our various initiatives. We ourselves are an outcome of the initiative of the government, the NDDB, at taking electronics to the villages as an initiative to empower the rural folk for their inclusive growth through the means of collective bargain in the cooperative movement. So we started with an electronic milk analyzer in the villages in 1981, and as the dairy industry grew, the demands grew, and we kept pace with those demands, and we used ICT at every stage. In 1981, when we had a technology, it was a discrete component-based system. We replaced it with an embedded software circuit so that we could add features as the needs grew. This is a vision where I like to share 3 things: rural electronics, non-conventional energy systems, and IT for rural areas. Our commitment is the total customer satisfaction quality management system by developing, marketing, and quality products. Our products are used in milk quality testing day in and day out, every day in the morning for 4 hours and 4 hours in the evening. They are also the basis for payment to the rural farmers. So this is something which cannot fail, and we have to ensure that these products, if they fail in one shift, they have to be operational in the second shift. These are our 4 areas. I'll go through the products. We also are answerable to our ministry through our MOU ratings. We work out an MOU with our ministry every year. And these are our ratings. We have had excellent rating most of the years, except when we had our wage revisions. So we had a dip on our financial performance. We are present all over the country. This is our deployment of these systems. We are a small organization with around 250 people, out of which 100 are deployed all over the country for the support services, which is also our USP. In the rural sector also, we are present all across the country. This is our distribution and sales network across the country. We have got 8 regional offices, 17 FMCs, and 71 sub-centers. All along our route, as we have worked for this rural sector, we have got lots of awards from DOE, which is now Ministry of IT, DSIR, Scope. These are some of our major awards. I'll just rush through them. We have taken a holistic approach to our domain in the dairy sector. As I was talking about this embedded software products, we have got the range of products which we have designed over the last 30 years. We started with an Auto Zero EMT. We had a data processor. When the needs grew at the grassroots level in villages, where probably a society initially had 100 members, grew to 500, 1,500, 2,000. So we gave that EMT which had no memory, no processing capability. We added a data processor wherever the need was. When the need grew, we integrated it into our product itself. Then we also came out with a smart EMT when the new generation company model in the dairy sector has emerged in the last 5 years. We also started with a smart auto EMT to take care of the women cooperatives where manual operation of these devices was cumbersome and full of fatigue for them. This is what we have done in the dairy vertical at the cooperative level, the products which I showed to you. Then we also have solutions for bulk milk reception, enterprise resource planning, web-based dairy business information system, and the last mile handheld terminals for retail distribution at the plant level, SCADA, and at the cattle level, RFID-based tagging. These are some of the solutions which we have put into place in the last 15 years in IT. This is the smart card-based automatic solution where on the smart card, the entire transaction could be stored. This we did way back in 98, 99 when the ID card, smart cards came into India. We had thought that maybe micro ATMs would become a dream soon, and these cards could also be used for the villagers to draw out the cash funds for the milk which they are pouring at the cooperative societies. This is then the second level at the reception at the plant where the milk from the villages moves to the plants. There also we had a network solution. As a part of a holistic approach, we also provided the network, power conditioning, local earth, etc., everything in a single package. Then we also have worked out an integrated solution for dairy plant, a sort of a dairy ERP, where these are the components which a typical ERP would have, except for something like a chilling center module, or a cooperative module, or a milk procurement module. Then these are the portable data terminals which we have used in this very industry also. For the last mile, where the kiosk at which the milk gets sold to you guys, this is where this is put to use. We have also used IVRS systems along the way. We have PSTN-based IVRS. We have got 30-channel ISDN-based IVRS system, depending on the load, whatever our end customers have. We also have put vehicle tracking system into place, which we hope would now come into demand with the Food Safety Act coming into place. This is the RFID application we worked for identification of the cattle. Because cattle health is important for the milk which is going to us, and milk is part of the integral part of our food in our Indian context especially. This is the RFID application for tagging. Now this entire thing which I've been talking of is emerging like a digital nervous system of the dairy industry, where at one end you have got the dairy farm, at the other end you have got the consumer. So at the dairy farm we have got this ID tagging, then we have got this milk esters, tanker e-sealing units, RMRD docks, SCADA enterprise. This is all we have been working for the dairy sector. We are present right now in more than 1 lakh villages all over the country. We are also associated with the electoral process. We were talking about in the morning about local language solutions for our rural people. This PC-based milk collection station, in 1990 when CDAC came out with the GIS technology for DOS-based systems, we acquired that technology, put that to use for delivering solutions in the Indian languages. This PC-based system is there in more than 9,000 villages across India, and all the Indian languages it is available. This electoral process also, when Mr. Seshan desired that we should have ID cards in the country in 1994, we used this technology for producing bilingual cards in Gujarat, Haryana, and Punjab. Right now we are also the state level agency for Rajasthan for the electoral process. We did this ID card process. Over the years, we also worked out a newer version of a ballot machine where we could even store the data of the polling booth in the machine itself in the control unit. So instead of a paper-based verification, we could probably have a electronic verification right there. We have also provided some web-based helpline systems in 2007, where it was also a SMS-based queries response system. SMSs we have been largely seeing either we are disseminating information or we are seeking information. This was a query response system where a person could send the voter ID number and he would be furnished with the detail whether the name exists at all in the list, and if it does, then the entire detail, and during the time of voting, also the address where the person is going to cast his vote. This is that SMS based system. This was not based on a typical HTTP API application. This was direct to air, where we use GSM modems for capturing the SMSs, processing them, and right away dispatching the SMSs to the query makers. We also provided a voter helpline call center.
Faster, please.
Yeah. Then we also had some dialer applications for them. This was a state level center which was created so that across the state we could monitor. Then we also had a 30-channel IVRS for VAT declaration and its verification by the field staff. We also used RFID tags for the tourist access facilitation system at the famous Amer Palace in Jaipur. We are also working, in the morning there was a presentation regarding enabling in Arayan block. This is one application where we are enabling deployment of SPV-based power plants at these Rajiv Gandhi Seva Kendra all across Rajasthan, which is about 9,500 locations. To keep a track right from the stage whether the building was ready, or rather I would say whether land was allocated for the building was ready, that entire thing we managed through this website with all the stakeholders, right from the Sarpanch to the BDO to the collector. Then right now we are working on the application software for State Land Development Bank. Recently he said that we need core banking solution in the cooperative banks to roll out UID. We are also into core banking solution for cooperative bank. We are doing it for the state of Rajasthan, where there are 401 branches and around 30 other locations. So this is in the process of rollout, and probably in the next 1 year, they should be rolled out in the state. These are the various devices which we have been putting to use. This is our countrywide deployment of our ITC-based products. We have got 1,900 some systems, 13 lakh, 8,900 PC-based solutions. We are also into dairy electronics. We are providing from low end to high end. This is our countrywide deployment in over 1 lakh villages. In renewable energy, we have got various range of products. This is the Rajiv Gandhi Kendra, where we are providing it at around 9,168 places. And the website we have provided is for monitoring that entire project over its life cycle. We have also provided solution through 5 megawatt SPV power plants. This is the site of it. We are talking of the last mile solution, and this is where you see that ICT is being enabled by solar power, and it would be done at these locations in the next 3 months. So these are some of the applications. This is also being put to use in schools where power is not available on a regular basis. This is our deployment. Our deployment is across the country. These are some of our proud moments. This is, we had an award yesterday. Our MD could not make it today because the President gave us an award yesterday on energy conservation. That's it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhargav. Very impressive. And I think now you have another possibility. You can work on handheld devices for releasing the payments at the grassroots level. So there is a great potential over there. Now I would request Mr. Samir Chaudhary, Additional General Manager, Power Grid Corporation of India, to make his presentation. Kindly be brief.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson, and dignified panelists and the audience. We are in a time management mode, and since we enter the penultimate stage of the conference, I see the biological battery of the participants dissipated mostly. So I have the responsibility to recharge to some extent. We have talked for 2 days for e-governance, E meaning electronic. So here I will try to make the electrons in motion, and that is how the power grid comes into picture. And we will talk about smart grid for a short while. But before that, am I audible? Before that, I will try to draw an analogy between this power network and information network. There are stark similarities and some fine dissimilarities also. The similarities, both are utilities and both are on-demand services, and both are operated in an interconnected mode, where the power is called grid, the information network is called internet. These are the similarity portions. Both are very dynamic in nature. However, the dissimilarities portions are very fine. In internet, in information content delivery, you can wait for the latency period when you click a hyperlink. But unfortunately in power, there is zero tolerance. When you switch on a gadget, you will not be allowed, you cannot stand any delay. And you will say, let there be light, and there has to be light. This is how the dissimilarity of the internet information system and power network is. Now, just to recharge your biology, I have to draw the analogy of biology of our system with the human anatomy. You can always notice the generation is the heart. Why I am showing this has got a very, very big relevance to the dynamics of the interconnected power system. any disturbance or any deviation on any part of your biological systems disturbs the whole constitution of your metabolism, that you already know. Similarly, in interconnected power systems, this happens. Anything, any indiscipline by any of the beneficiaries or any of their constitutions creates havoc in the system. We have seen the 31st July episode, what happened in Northern Grid and part of the Eastern Grid. And this doesn't happen mostly in the information network, because there are independent sources, there are plethora of service providers, plethora of link providers, and plethora of applications. This doesn't happen in electric power system, but what happens is there is a transmission system which is main arteries. Power Grid Corporation is a central transmission utility which builds the super highway, establishes the complete extra high voltage transmission system throughout the country, and it evacuates the bulk power for the central generating stations and delivers to state power loads, grids and load centers. So this is through these main arteries, but this doesn't stop there. There are sub-transmission and sub-arteries which reaches all the state load center. That doesn't stop there. It goes to distribution capillaries, which has distribution systems, which is ultimately your end customers are connected to this. This doesn't stop here, because there is a complete communication system which is in your body, is a nervous system. I hope your battery is getting charged up. Yes or no? Yes, sir. Now, but doesn't steps here. There is a brain which controls the whole system. This is our regional load dispatch centers, which have got SCADA and energy management systems, which continuously monitors the whole system parameters. What are the system parameters? You can kindly concentrate on the bottom left side. There is voltage, which is equivalent to your blood pressure, and frequency, which is equivalent to your heartbeat. So this is the biology of the power systems. This is the actual texture of the power system, where generation is in the layer, central transmission, sub-transmission and sub-transmission and utilities, distributed utilities and consumers. There are players, system operators, traders, and now the power exchange body has come. Now, what is the objective of the power systems? Everybody, whosoever gives a bill, what he will ask for? He will ask for reliability, quality, security, and affordability. No question asked. I have to switch on my gadget, power has to flow there. I don't know who will supply, I don't know who will manage, I don't know who will operate, I don't know who will manage. And if it is not there, there is a horrible condition. The whole system operates on the load generation balancing mode. If it is not there, the frequency is disturbed, the whole power system may collapse partly, and then there will be a cascading effect. Normally this doesn't happen in the information network, because information is delivered in packet switching through routing instruments, but from different paths. If you are not getting one, if you will get from the second. But power moves through physics by displacement mode. It will be definitely provided by any of the generators from any of the country or peated load centers. But what happens? It follows a rule of a professor called Kirchhoff. So depending on the situation, on the load point, the power will be delivered from your different sources. So what the need has been felt, that there has to be a smart grid. Smart grid means continuous, perfect integration right from the consumer's load end to the source point, that is the generators. So smart grid refers to the smart and intelligent power network. I have been requested for time management also, that's why I am going quickly. I may not be covering all the slides, but I will show you some of the relevant. The core of smart grid is optimizing energy efficiency by sharing information both ways between the power supplier and the consumer in real time by grafting IT technology onto the power network. That's why I told whenever we have talked e-governance, we have talked of electronic governance. We are here talking of electronics in motion and IT superimposed on power. A full smart grid encompasses all aspects of the power chain, from generation to transmission to distribution to consumption to markets and consumers. Need of smart grid. See, this is there, everybody talks of smartness, but when you come to power system, you have to think very cautiously. Spread of Indian power system is increasing to new dimensions. In future single grid, there will be more than 250 gigawatt capacity for operation. This is a very, very bulk high volume. With the growth of mesh network, complexities due to change in power flow direction, wide variation in supply and demand, etc. have grown manifold. Open electricity market, the market has been opened now to private players, has given a new paradigm shift the way power is generated, transmitted and distributed. In order to maintain sustainability, emphasis has been given to develop renewable energy and its integration. This is a new dimension to the power sector. AT&C and losses, this is technical and commercial loss combined, has reached an alarming level in the, I think in the morning session you have already heard 30–35% loss is this AT&C loss. Considering increasing complexities in the every segment in the entire value chain, it is prudent to introduce intelligence in all fronts of the power sector through smart grid application. To create a balance of demand and supply with minimum cost and in a sustainable manner, functional multiple power exchanges, reliability, adequacy and security, and integration of large power systems, especially in southern grid is not connected synchronously, so that has to be done. So what is the vision? Power grid, power network that is self-healing, vision of smart grid, self-healing, adaptive, interactive, secure from attacks, accommodate all generation storage points, allows bidirectional energy flow, distributed across geographies and organizational boundaries. Distributed generation, renewable generation integration for reduced congestion as generation is close to end use. Reduction in CO2 and greenhouse gas emissions. Electric vehicles as energy, this is the latest trend. Smart buildings, in fact the main fundamental smart grid is nobody will be permanently a consumer. Every equipment, whatever is coming up, will be also a generator at times in demand. Home area networks with demand response technology, control of smart consumer appliances and goods. So smart grid power sector is you can call it in a 4 segments: generation, which is integration of renewable energy, transmission, asset management, distribution, advanced metering infrastructure, the latest trend and much talked of, and system operator, self-healing, WAMs and adaptive islanding. This is a typical smart grid scenario. It will facilitate efficient and reliable end-to-end intelligent two-way delivery system from source to sink through smart generation, including renewable energy, smart transmission and distribution. This I am skipping. This transmission, existing SCADA IMS facility provides only steady-state view of the grid. To address, we have got all this SCADA EMS center, there only monitoring is there. There is no control or as such from there. We can only direct all the state grids that you have to balance your load generation and also restrict your overdrawal. So this is how. There is a economic framework also. There is a ABT, availability based tariff. There is incentivization and also there is penalty for overdrawal. This is smart grids through WAMs. Synchrophasor technology provides real-time dynamic state of the system, which shall improve virtualization and situational awareness of grid events. This is a typical position in the distribution sector. Advanced metering infrastructure, demand side management, power quality management, outage management system, smart microgrid, SCADA and DMS, plug-in electric vehicles, energy storage, integration of distributed generation and other facilities. So these some of the benefits are here, loss reduction and peak load reduction, then accommodation of all types of renewable generation and storage options. Power Grid has taken the pioneering project of smart grid in India. There is a Indian
short.
It is already shortened. So I will just show you some of the. This is a Pondicherry pilot project. The smart meter locations, advanced metering infrastructure, and this is a working model of the smart grid. You will see from the distribution there is solar plant, there is biomass plant, there is wind generators, there is home appliances which are all integrated, and this is a real life smart home solutions where you can through RF module from a computer or your mobile device you can control your home gadgets from a distance. This is a typical solution for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chaudhary. We certainly need smart grids and smarter grids because I believe TNC losses about 30 to 40%. on a lower side. So we certainly need a lot of help from your side. Now I invite Mr. Omkar Rai, who is also the co-chair of this session. He is from the STPI. I would request him to make his presentation, please. This is the last, he's DG Software Technology Park of India. And this would be the last presentation of not only today, this session, today, and of course the entire conference. So you have this,
thank you, ma'am.
It's a feather in your cap. Now you have to see how you finish it in
introduce myself.
time. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Omkar Rai, and I am Director General of Software Technology Parks of India. I don't have any presentation to make, merely few words to express. STPI was created in 1991 to facilitate export in the field of software and software services from the country. And as of now, the software export from the country is $68 billion. And this sector has created 2.5 million direct jobs and 4 times indirect jobs. That is the statistics says. We look at the whole development of the field of IT and ITS industry in a very different manner and bring a different kind of perspective. When we find that the e-governance projects are being undertaken, we feel very happy about for 2 reasons. First, that the citizens of this country would get the services and the delivery of the services to their doorsteps. The productivity will increase. At the same time, we see a great future for the development of entrepreneurship in the field of IT and ITS, for which STPI has been created. So we find a very great synergy between e-governance sector, where the government is working for, computerization of their services so that it can be made readily available to the users and the citizens. At the same time, we find an opportunity for an entrepreneur in the field of IT, ITS to develop its own industry, to develop its own business, while delivering those services and helping the government deliver those services to the citizens of this country. ICT is a great enabler, and very rightly the ICT for inclusive growth is a great topic, because including people while we grow is a very great challenge, and it has not been happening. We are 1.2 billion country, and the prosperity and the growth is not has not reached to the many. And with the advent of IT and ICT application and tools, we are finding it easy to take those services, prosperity, wealth, and jobs to the people wherever they are. We are helping, in these ages, that the migration does not happen. The knowledge reaches to the people, the information reaches to the people, the services reaches to the people, so that the divide between poor and rich, the urban and rural, the haves and have-nots is minimized, and that's where the ICT has played a great role. If you look at the national policy on IT and electronics, which has been just announced by the Government of India, we find a great emphasis on the entrepreneurial development and incubation activity. Because the Government of India has seen a great potential within the country for the development of entrepreneurship and product development, the time is ripe for all of us to really endeavor into development of products and patent within the country, because this e-governance application, which is being implemented across the country, has thrown a lot of challenge and opportunity for us to develop our product, which will be consumed by the governments at various levels and various domains. Second, that the government has laid a great emphasis on ICT induction across the domain of industry. It's a G2C kind of thing, G2B kind of thing, where government believes that in case the ICT is adopted by these industries, it will not only increase their productivity, but it will also create a chain of entrepreneurial activity within the country. So with these few words, I would only say that the time is ripe, and we are at a juncture where things are getting synergized for development of entrepreneurship, for development of product within this country, and for having a great market in terms of government and e-governance sector, which is going to consume a lot of product within this country. With this, I would thank the organizers, particularly the Government of Rajasthan, Secretary IT Sanjay Malhotra ji, and others to invite me here at this occasion. And thank you very much, President.
Thank you, Shri Rai. This brings us to the end of the session and also to the end of this conference. Especially in the session, we got a lot of inputs from various people, of course, very diverse. If you have some questions, then we can take them up, or I think most of us would be waiting for the people to come and tell us that please get up, because already we've exceeded the time limit of 4:30. So, but I understand there are no pressing questions. So a very interesting conference indeed. I must put on record my sincere thanks to the elites and also to the government of Gujarat. Sorry, it always comes naturally to me, so I can't help it. Sorry, government of Rajasthan. I'm sorry for that slip. See, that's what happens to the bureaucrats over a period of time. So we get so committed to our state. So certainly Udaipur is an excellent place, and I'm sure you would have enjoyed, all of you would have enjoyed your stay. On my part, certainly I enjoyed a lot, and it's been very informative. And I must congratulate Ravi, because he has tried to bring in a diverse kind of issues that are burning issues right now, right from UID to the cyber security. In fact, I have not witnessed the 2-day sessions. Of course, I saw the list of the sessions, including teleconferencing and how we should use video conferencing and cloud network and all that. But very pressing issues, very real issues for the entire IT sector, which we have to address in order to make ourselves more effective, especially in the government. So thank you, Ravi, for to provide us all this information. And we are certainly returning back quite enriched. Thank you very much. And my special thanks to the Secretary IT, Government of Rajasthan, Shri Sanjay Malhotra, who is with us right now also, and his sincerity has made all this possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. We quickly would like to present mementos as a token of appreciation to all our speakers. But before we present the mementos to the speaker, I would like to call upon stage Mr. Sanjay Malhotra, Secretary IT, Government of Rajasthan, to give his vote of thanks to the audiences. Mr. Malhotra, please.
Distinguished panelists and delegates from all across the country, I would like to thank each one of you for having come here and having deliberated on these sessions for these 3 days. We started day before yesterday. We were very unsure, about the level of participation that we would get, because we hardly had any time, to prepare. But I think all thanks to Mr. Ravi Gupta and his team to have put up such a wonderful show in such a short notice. And thanks to all of you, for having made it possible to come here, because the time was short, distances. Udaipur is not all that well connected as, Bangalore and Delhi and some other venues. But despite that, and we have had some great sessions over here, whether it has been, on digital divide, whether it is smart cities, whether it was teleconferencing and so on. I think all of us have benefited, because I have met, people not only from my own department, from my own government, but also, from other sectors, from the private sector. I do feel that Mr. Ravi Gupta and his team have done a good job over here. All of us have really benefited from it, and we'll take back, some ideas from here and try to implement them in whatever jobs we are doing, whether it is in the private sector or in the public sector. So, my thanks to Mr. Ravi Gupta, my thanks to all the delegates from the public sector and the private sector, my thanks to the panelists, not only this session, but all the sessions, and of course, special thanks to the sponsors who have made it possible. Thank you very much, everyone.
Now, because we have Mr. Malhotra with us on the dais, so I would like him to present the mementos to all the speakers of the panel. May we have the mementos, please? Starting with, we would like to give a memento to Mr. Korath V. Matthew, Senior State Projects Coordinator, UIDAI, Government of India. Mr. Matthew, please. Next, we have Mrs. Indu Gupta, Senior Technical Director in SIO, Rajasthan Government. Mr. Muktesh Pardesi, Joint Secretary and Chief Passport Officer, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. Mr. Ajay Bhargava, AGM, Corporate Planning and IT, Retail, REIL, sorry. I am sorry for my slip of tongue, REIL. Next, we have Mr. Sameer Chaudhary, Additional General Manager, Power Grid Corporation of India. Our co-chair, Dr. Omkar Rai, DG, STPI. And lastly, we have our session chair, Anju Sharma, Secretary, Women and Child Development, Gujarat.
Just last words, I think, and I think I have been given undue credit for the success. I think it's all because of Sir and he's taking this initiative that this event has been succeeded. So just I want that all of you give a big hand to Malhotra sir.
I think I forgot to mention, because a lot of people from our own department have also put in a lot of effort, led by Mr. Deshpande and Mr. Dheer and everyone. So my thanks to whatever thanks, he's giving. I think it is all because of the team that we have behind here. Thank you.
एक group photo of the session, sir. I just want to have it here, and can I just invite sir Ravi Shankar sir also on the dais, sir. एक memory हो जाएगी sir. आप रहेंगे तो यहाँ पर. Please come on the dais. And I just invite one special person, Krishan, here on the stage. He brought us to Udaipur actually. So, yeah. Thank you.